How do I tell my girlfriend a prenup and keeping my inherited house separate are non-negotiable? I'm in my late 20s, dating a woman in her late 20s. We've been together for about 6 months, and I want to start talking about long-term plans, potentially moving in together, marriage, and kids someday. About 7 years ago, my parents passed away, and since I was an only child, I inherited their house. It's fully paid off. I rent out the upstairs currently, and live in the basement after I renovated it to be its own separate unit. Because of their life insurance and other assets, I'm financially secure and technically don't need to work. I have a job, but it's not like I make 6 figures or anything. The house is my childhood home and has emotional value to me. I've already decided that I will never add anyone to the deed, even if I get married. If I have kids, I would structure things so that the house passes directly to them. I guess through a trust. Same thing with the inheritance money. I'm fine using income or growth from it to build a life together, but the core inherited assets themselves would always remain legally separate. If I ever get married, a prenup would be mandatory for me. It wouldn't just cover the house, but also clearly define that my inheritance remains separate property. This isn't about assuming divorce or not loving someone fully, it's about protecting what my parents left me and making sure that it ultimately benefits my children. I have a friend that ended up not getting anything from their mother when she died because she left everything to her second husband, and I refuse to even let that be an option if I have children. I haven't brought this up yet because we haven't been dating for that long, but I don't want to waste her time as we get more serious if this is unacceptable to her. I definitely don't want to profit off of her if we moved in together. If we moved into my place, she would never have to pay anything to maintenance or property tax, only utilities and groceries. If that seemed weird for her, I'd be happy to move into a separate place together and split costs. I don't want to have this be viewed as me being controlling or worried it'll sound like I'm planning for failure before we're even engaged. How would you approach this conversation? And if you were in her position, would you want to know sooner rather than later? I don't need advice on how to structure a prenup. She will have her own lawyer should she agree to a prenup. I will pay for this with a smile on my face. I am not forcing her to forever live in this home. We can live anywhere. She just won't have equity in this one home. I'm not counting down the days until I can make her become a homeless widow. Things would be structured so that she wouldn't have to deal with my home when I die. She would very well be taken care of once we actually come to an agreement on prenup terms. I'm a huge believer in life insurance. I have my own retirement accounts that she will get access to. Sorry if this sounds like I'm condescending, but apparently you need to explicitly state that you don't relish the chance to be a villain from a Dickens novel. Thank you for any advice. In the comments, Shelby the Turd says, "The thing with prenups is you can structure it where both parties are protected. Should you have a prenup with your girlfriend prior to marriage, you could also include conditions, such as if she contributes financially to the home, that she should be compensated and that future assets would be split. I would talk to a lawyer regarding options. It makes financial sense what you want to do. Protecting both parties is the whole point of a prenup. In a perfect world, yes. In reality, it can be predatory. That's why you talk with lawyers present. Before a prenup conversation, have you guys discussed what you want for the future in more general terms? Does she want to stay in your current community permanently? Does she want kids and marriage? What are her goals in the next 5 years? I think you need to consider from a relationship perspective that if you die, your wife of, say, 20 years could now lose what has become her family home with no financial gain if her adult children inherit it and sell/move in. That's very long-term thinking, but it would be one of my several concerns if I was her. Yeah, I think it's important to secure her future if he passes. It would be horrible if she were kicked out of her home for some reason or would suffer financially. Agreed. Seems like OP isn't considering this angle. Or the angle of lack of freedom for her. Sounds like while she's in this relationship, she will never have the opportunity to pick where she lives, own her own home, or make mutual choices about her living situation. From the way that OP's talking, seems like he's extremely attached to the house in a way that might even restrict how she's able to use it, if she can have pets, etc. He needs to tell her ASAP. This is a pretty big deal unless he's willing to keep this asset, but also buy a home with his future wife and let her have some say in her living situation. And now, on to the update. First, thank you to the minority of people who actually read the post and responded to the question I asked. A few of you gave thoughtful, practical advice about framing and timing, and that genuinely helped. That said, most of the comments were unhelpful at best, or highlighted a pretty clear misunderstanding of the basic premise of the post at worst. A surprising number of responses invented scenarios that I had already explicitly addressed. For an actual update, she brought up moving in together first a couple of weeks after the original post. We were talking about her lease being up in a few months, and she asked whether I'd thought about us living together. That naturally opened the door to the bigger, long-term conversation. I told her that I'd been thinking about it too, and that before we made any major decisions, I wanted to be transparent about something important regarding my house and inheritance. I framed it not as planning for divorce, but as ensuring long-term success for future kids. I explained clearly. The house will always remain solely in my name. The inherited principal will remain separated property. If I ever get married, a prenup would be mandatory. I would ensure that my partner is protected, life insurance, retirement accounts, etc., but the core inherited assets would stay legally separate. Then I waited for the dramatic fallout that many commenters seemed convinced was inevitable. She responded, "That makes complete sense." She said she would think that it was irresponsible not to protect inherited assets. She said it made sense that I would want it confirmed in writing that she was aware of these conditions beforehand to remove any confusion or contention later on. She appreciated that I had thought through it carefully and had clear values around it. When I told her she would absolutely have her own independent lawyer, paid for by me, to review any agreement, she said that's exactly how it should be handled. She was also genuinely excited when she realized how financially secure I am. Not in a weird way, just that it made her feel stable and optimistic about building a future with someone who plans ahead. She especially appreciated that while I made it clear the house itself is off limits, I was completely willing to move if shared property equity was important to her. She'd never even seen the upper levels since it's currently rented out. If we ever bought a different home together, that would be joint. The inherited house is the only thing that stays separate. And yes, I showed her the original post. Her main takeaway was asking why over half of the people couldn't understand that the house was off limits, while it was clearly stated that I was willing to move to another house if property equity was important to her. She was genuinely baffled at how many responses ignored that basic detail. She also didn't understand why so many people kept explaining what a prenup was when that was completely unrelated to the post. As for my apparent fill-in arc, if living together goes well and we get married, somehow we will have to survive me being unemployed and only working 40 hours a week, splitting the tragic pittance of my above-median salary, rental income, and interest and dividends, while she saves nearly $30,000 a year that she previously spent on rent. All while I cackle with glee, knowing that I set it up so that she is out on the streets the second I die. I'll be sure to tell the next homeless person I meet that they're lucky they don't have to deal with real financial insecurity like she does. The only painful thing is now that she fully understands my financial situation, she truly questions why I voluntarily drive a 10-year-old Prius. Apparently, financial security doesn't excuse that level of commitment to fuel efficiency. All sarcasm aside, the conversation made us closer. It forced us to talk seriously about long-term values, money philosophy, and what marriage actually means to each of us. I'm glad I didn't avoid it because of worst-case predictions from strangers online. For anyone in a similar position, have the conversation sooner rather than later. How you frame it matters far more than the fact that you want a prenup. Don't be selfish and only discuss how this will protect you, and anyone who insists you split equity with someone who contributed nothing is an idiot. In the comments, Wearing Coat says, I mean, you've already inherited the house and assets, and these would not have automatically been community property in a marriage, in most states, unless you explicitly put her on the deed, which you said you'd already decided against. So it's really more of a formality conversation that she, or anyone you marry, should not expect that the house/assets be considered dividable property in the event of a divorce, and your intention would be to pass this to children through a trust at the end of life. Although it might be prudent as well to consider a possibility in which your spouse outlives you and you don't have children to pass these things to, but I'm sure you've got that covered as well. At the very least, she would automatically be considered next of kin. Editing to add here, you will also want to consider how estate tax is handled to reduce your tax liability, while also ensuring your assets are passed on to whoever in the manner that you want. I don't know how this works well enough myself. A prenup in this case would only be used to define community property after legal marriage, which is more than sensible to define for anyone considering marriage. The automatic privileges and protections provided by legal marriage, of which there are about 1,400, might not suit everyone's circumstances. So why wouldn't you take the opportunity to leverage simple contract law to basically create your own? Prenups have gotten too emotional and seen simply as who gets what in the event of a divorce, when really there are so many estate, asset, health, custody, and tax aspects to these agreements that are designed to protect all parties involved when participants are both rational enough to consider the possibility of divorce, death, disability, illness, etc. Yeah, this is why people kept explaining what prenup is. Half of this is wrong. Yes, the house will stay in his name, but the liquid core principal assets are not explicitly sequestered or protected by a prenup and are used for common household expenses, like going on a holiday, etc. Then it is considered to be commingled and gets folded into the marital estate. I know a lot of people will tune this out as legal jargon and mumbo-jumbo, but I know that having these things explicitly explained will help those unsure of the problems here maybe get a better understanding of what's going on, I suppose. After both the original post and the update, I see where OP is coming from, and I'm on his side as well. I think what everyone has said here is that the problem was he didn't want to go into the marriage without a prenup because if a divorce happens, if there is an infidelity, whatever, who knows what, he doesn't want his childhood home being taken from him, because we have seen that happen in marriages where someone comes in with a fully paid off house, they get married without a prenup, and then half of that is taken off of them. I think that's what it boils down to. He just wants to make sure that doesn't happen. And I would think that because of a lot of modern discourse around people becoming distrustful of the concept of marriage and just talking a lot of shit about it online, on these media spaces like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, formerly known as X, you have a lot of disinformation and shit like that just spread around where people are like, bro, don't get married, she's gonna take half of everything, how is that fair? Anyway, I think the update shows the best possible outcome here. You guys are both mature, level-headed people, and I expect that there will be no problems. So I'm glad that you came back for the update, OP, thank you. Our next post is from the Am I the Asshole Pod subreddit. Shout out to them, AITA Pod. Go give their channel a watch if you didn't know about it already. Posted by user Illustrious Heart 2531, titled, Am I the asshole for considering a breakup after boyfriend bailed on being my surgery ride? I, 29 female, have been with my boyfriend, 39 male, 10-year age gap, I'm sure that won't be a problem, for about a year and a half. He's kind, social, and really busy. Early on, he told me he's bad at planning, which I accepted. In reality, it meant I adapted to him. Our time together was usually probably Friday or maybe Sunday, and I'd wait until the day of to know if we were actually seeing each other. Over time, I noticed I was basically the only flexible part of his life. He never misses poker night, gym class, or frequent family dinners. Those are always set. But with me, plans stay loose. I stopped pushing and just opted to keep my schedule open, telling myself that if I wanted to see him, this was how it worked. There have been some occasions where plans were kept. We've been on 2 vacations, for instance, but when it comes to more routine life, this is the pattern I've noticed. It does bother me, but in the end, he's available and we see each other pretty frequently. And when we do see each other, he is focused and attentive. I guess that's why I put up with it. It felt like a planning issue, not really a priorities issue or a quality time issue. But last week, something changed in me. I had a medical procedure scheduled one morning, a minor surgery, but I did go under, and I couldn't drive afterward, or take a share ride, because the hospital won't let you. He had told me earlier in the week that he'd be free and would take me. That morning, he texted saying he'd forgotten and had already committed to helping a friend move. He suggested that I take an Uber and said we'd make it up another time. What? I explained that I couldn't and that this was surgery and I'd really like to not have to worry about this at 6:30 a.m. day of. He caved, but was standoffish when he picked me up, which obviously was not great after being intubated. Last night I told him how bothered I was. He said I was being unfair because I know how he is with planning and that I hadn't really stressed the importance of this. To be fair, I don't think I'd mentioned the Uber thing to him prior. But throughout the conversation, it just seemed to me that this was nothing to do with the details. I just wasn't being prioritized. I realized I've been enabling this by staying vague, available, and accepting scraps because it felt easier than asking for more. I told him that I don't want to continue like this and that this affected my ability to trust him in a serious situation. He says I'm overreacting and punishing him for a one-time mistake that is partly on me. Some friends say that I trained him to treat me this way and I should try to salvage. I feel done. Am I the asshole? In the comments, Impossible Joke says, "You are a low priority for him and either need to be fine with that or kick him to the curb." OP, please listen to this person. He's not bad at planning. He's perfectly capable of planning dinners with his family, going to the gym, etc. You are disposable to him. You are convenient if you were around, but you are very low on his priority list. I think you've been with him long enough that you seemed to understand it, and yet you are continuing to accept it. He is showing you time and again that you aren't high on the list of people that he cares enough about to actually show up and keep plans. And I don't mean to be unkind, but why should he feel that you're a priority when you accept him treating you like crap? You say in this that you were sitting around waiting for him on a Friday or a Sunday to see if he wants to get together? You seem like a lovely person. You're acting like a doormat. He's taking advantage of you because you're allowing it to happen. You deserve so much better. 10-year age gap and doesn't prioritize you when you're literally in the fucking hospital. Don't be stupid, babe. Ew, I didn't even check the ages. 40-year-old man acting like he's fresh into his adulting life of planning and prioritizing. That's bullshit and you know it, OP. Believe his actions over his words. Even if the logic, you trained him to treat you this way, made sense, it's easier to start a new relationship with someone who has respect for you and can't be trained into deprioritizing you than staying with someone who doesn't give a fuck about you. That being said, you didn't train him to do shit. You maybe allowed yourself to be treated like an afterthought, but that's only because he felt that way and started doing it first. Any person who holds themselves to a standard in their relationship cannot be taught to deprioritize their partner. This man has shown you time and again how little you matter to him. Good on you for knowing your worth and leaving. And now onto the follow-up post, titled, "Am I the asshole for refusing to tell my boyfriend how much money I make?" So I've been with my boyfriend for about a year and a half. We're definitely on the serious side, but I've learned some lessons like taking things slow. We will typically spend 1 or 2 nights a week together, but not every weekend, for instance. The fact that we both have pets is also a factor. I have 2 cats, and he has a mountain dog. He isn't a great planner either, and we've had some huge fights over that, but overall, he's a good guy, and I am committed to him. We are fairly normal and have talked about all the things that people normally talk about after this time dating. Formative memories, exes, what we want out of life, etc., and we're pretty aligned on just about everything. Early on, maybe 1 month in, he got curious about my financial situation, and I said that was a boundary for me. He accepted it and moved on, but it's come up again and again. This is over the course of months, so it's not like he's forcing the issue, but money discussions do arise. We took a trip to Hawaii, for instance. I said I think it's reasonable to split down the middle, but I'll be honest, maybe it isn't. The truth is, he makes about half of what I do. We both have salary jobs that pay similarly, but I have a couple of freelance gigs which dramatically increase my income. I came from pretty stark poverty, and the idea of sharing money with a man is very difficult for me. It came up again recently, and again I said I don't want to go there. He said he thinks it's weird that we've been together this long and haven't. He didn't come at me or really dwell on the issue or anything, but it still makes me feel guilty or like I'm doing something wrong. Am I the asshole? In the comments, you are not married. He can pay half. Your money is your business until you're married. If you're getting to the point of talking about moving in together, or even marriage, he should have some idea of your finances. Before getting married, you both should put all of it on the table. Income, assets, savings, debt, everything. Get a prenup to protect what you're bringing in. Don't feel bad about keeping separate accounts for shared expenses and personal funds. Make sure that you're on the same page for retirement savings and emergency funds. It would be fair if you paid a higher proportion of shared expenses if you make more than he does, but be sure that he is not taking advantage. It's fine if you're just dating, but if you're planning on getting engaged and married, you need to talk about it, especially if you move in together. You can get your money separate, but it's important to know each other's financial situation. Wouldn't you want him to tell you if he made close to nothing or had a ton of debt before committing long-term? A year and a half in, and he doesn't know how much you make, is definitely weird. If you don't want a future with him, then let him go. And now, on to the update. So I read all the comments and have been thinking a lot about my relationship. I had also posted that he didn't pick me up for surgery, which was a pretty serious issue that a lot of people called a huge red flag. This was also in a context where making plans always made me feel like a low priority. I don't really think I got over all of that. After lots of reflection, I concluded that we just aren't a match. I think I'm guarded with him because he continues to show signs of inconsistency and uncertainty around me. I don't think I can trust him and open up more, and beyond this income thing, there are other aspects to me that I just don't care to share with him. We've also been very slow about integrating with each other's friends and family. Basically, it's barely happened. I met his mum once, but it was more of a coincidence than an actual meeting. I've been waiting for him to initiate more, and he hasn't. I was of the mind that I should just be patient, but I started to feel that it should just end. I did the right thing and met up with him for the breakup, and he was understanding. We both agreed it sucked, and we did have some good times, even some great ones, but that this had run its course. The only thing that he did that didn't sit well with me was him calling it a situationship, which I felt was him trying to minimize the relationship because he just got dumped, but all in all, not that big of a deal. And he has been civil otherwise. Appreciate everyone's thoughts and looking forward to greener pastures once this all passes over. In the comments, the situationship comment was bonus material in case you needed reminding that you did the right thing. The surgery post was really it for me. The fact that he doesn't have a problem with time management when it comes to his poker nights or the gym or his family events shows it's not truly about time management, but priorities and where you place on them. What really got me was how he treated you when he did pick you up, and that he'd never fully apologized for this. The fact that you were with him for a year and a half and didn't feel safe telling him your salary was a really telling piece of information. Being transparent about finances is a really important part of a committed, long-term relationship, and that you had hesitancy over this shows that things weren't where they needed to be. He was ironically telling the full truth for once. He simply wanted someone at his beck and call. Yep, that was exactly my thoughts when I read it. He viewed it as a situationship the whole time, which is why he never prioritized her and gave her shit for the one time she needed him to commit to an important task. I'm glad she never told him anything about money. The only thing that rubbed me wrong this whole post was her saying, "I have issues sharing money with a man." I understand where you're coming from with that, but if I were to say the same like, "Hey guys, I love this girl, but I'm not telling her how much I make because I have a fucking issue with sharing money with a woman. That's fucked up, and I don't agree with that. That's something where I'm like, you need to work through whatever that mental block is, because I feel like that's unacceptable as a premise. Anyway, on to my judgment. I don't think you're wrong for keeping your income private, OP. I think you probably had a gut feeling that you were ignoring OP about, this whole situationship vibe. It was like unspoken. It makes complete sense to not want to share your income if you felt like he wasn't actually committed to you. You didn't feel safe opening up to him. And that usually means that trust isn't there. Whatever trust existed was already eroding. And him flaking on you and then guilt-tripping you about the surgery situation was doubly fucked up. When you've been slighted so much like you were over all of these situations, over all of this time, it makes sense why you're reluctant to share your financial details, because you feel like you're going to be taken advantage of more. I think this breakup was long overdue for you because it was obvious that he was getting everything he wanted out of this. Calling it a situationship, he was not gonna break up with you as long as you would put up with his bullshit. I'm glad that you finally ended it though. Thank you for that, and thank you for the update. Our next post is by user GF Club Owner, titled, My 38 male, girlfriend 32 female, of 3 years, owns a porn store/strip club. I want her to sell it before I propose. So my girlfriend was left a porn store and strip club by her dad when he died 8 years ago. He let it go to be a shithole, but she poured her entire inheritance and took out some loans to revamp them both. It is now a popular, well-managed establishment. She makes a decent living, but I have issues, and I want her to sell it before I will even think of proposing. I don't think the adult industry is a positive place for anyone. I can't tell my strict Catholic parents what she does for a living. She has put a lot of time into the club. On Saturday, we had plans to go see Shazam and have dinner. She got a call saying that a bartender's kid is sick, and she ended up working until 4 a.m. due to having no coverage. This is a regular occurrence in some capacity. She just shrugs at me and tells me that it's part of being an active owner of a successful business. She ends up working until 4 a.m. at least 4 times a week. She's adamant that she will not sell. I need some good points as to why she should. Points involving children will not work, as she doesn't want children. In the comments, Agent Skvilly says, It clearly makes her happy, and it sounds like she's good at it. Why should she have to sell her business that she enjoys running just to appease you and your parents? Let her be a successful business owner. OP says, I admit she is great at it. I don't see why she can't just sell it and buy a regular bar. Is your issue more that she's going to be completely devoted to keeping a small business profitable, or the nature of the business itself? Pulling mammoth hours is pretty standard for non-shithole small businesses, your term, that remain in business, though if she's reached a point where the business can be managed by hired people and she can live her life, you may want to ask her what she thinks. Especially if you two are getting serious about marriage and building a family, it's a necessary discussion pre-proposal. That said, considering the work she's put in, I wouldn't find it surprising at all if she's reluctant to let go of any level of control and responsibility. As far as the nature of the business, that's a bit trickier. But don't start with, my parents don't approve. Don't bring that up at all, actually. In fact, don't let that be a reason for anything to do with the relationship. Edit, I write this assuming the OP is bringing up his concerns to her separate from a marriage proposal, but making clear that it's an issue for him going forward in their relationship. OP says, she said that letting other people manage it was what got it into the issues that it had when her dad left it to her. She also enjoys having goals and managing the club. She doesn't want kids, so she doesn't think the hours she works should be an issue. And now, on to update 1. I decided to tell her that the sexual side of the store and the club bothered me, and that I wanted her to sell it before I would propose. I made breakfast before she left to go over to the store for the day. She dumped me on the spot. She said she enjoys her work, loves the adult industry, and has no plans on selling ever. She said she's worked too hard and too long for that sort of bullshit. We don't live together, so we walked through her apartment to gather my things. We gave each other's keys back. She already blocked me on Facebook. In the comments, she can do whatever she wants. You can do whatever you want. If you don't see yourself being married to a strip club owner and she wants to be, then this is the best outcome. Move on. OP says, it is the best outcome. I agree. It was our third conversation about the issue, and each time she offered no sort of indication that she felt my feelings were valid. So does she strip as well? She covers for the bartender, and I assume that meant she covers for others as well. OP says, no, she does not strip. If a dancer doesn't show, then it's not the end of the world, because the other dancers just pick up the slack. Waitstaff for the restaurant, bartenders and cashiers for store are the roles that she feels she can do. She does dress a little more provocatively when bartending, but nothing indecent. And now for update 2, titled, I Want My Ex-Girlfriend Back. So I broke up with my ex-girlfriend against Reddit's advice because she owns a strip club/porn store that she inherited from her father and refused to sell. I ended up telling my parents what she did for a living, and they were shockingly cool with it. My dad said he even had his suspicions because he knew her dad growing up and figured it out through the last name. Her dad was well known in town. I went to the club last week to try to talk to her, but she was covering for a bartender again. She was dressed up as Suicide Squad Harley Quinn, and she did the gun-cocking motion with a bat like Harley did in the movie while I was across the room heading towards the bar. Next thing I know, I was being escorted out by the bouncers. She blocked me completely on everything. I was thinking of sending her a snail mail letter, but does that even work? I'm not even sure what I would say. In the comments, she dumped me on the spot, so conveniently became, I broke up with my ex-girlfriend against Reddit's advice. The fact that he threw in against Reddit's advice to make himself sound like some sort of rebel martyr is sending me. Buddy, Reddit's advice was don't do this, she will dump you, and then she literally did exactly that. I broke up with my ex-girlfriend? No, you didn't. She dumped you. Not just dumped him, but dumped him on the spot. And Mummy and Daddy that he was so worried about didn't even care. Plus, he got escorted from her club. Hilarious. If that were me, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have done an update. Look, OP, you're allowed to be uncomfortable dating someone in the adult industry. That's completely understandable and a valid boundary. But you basically gave her an ultimatum to sell her successful business that she built from the ground up. Just for what? So you could feel better or avoid awkward conversations with your parents, which all turned out to be in your head anyway? You tried to emotionally manipulate her to give up her livelihood, her passion, and something that she was invested in. Looking at this from her perspective, you were basically asking her to abandon a major part of her identity and career. Why would she choose you? Why? Are you delusional? You know what she's like. You dated her for so long. Why wouldn't she just cut you off entirely and not give you a chance to enter her life again? I'm going to guess that she has done this to people before, and she has explicitly told you to your face that this is how she treats breakups. The fact that you think you have any chance of getting back with her is hilarious to me. Some people go full grey wall, no contact with their exes again ever after a breakup. You should have seen this coming. You should have known better. You're an asshole for this one, OP. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you today. I do hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.